Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending. I'm Eve Ross, Chair of Arizona's Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee. I've spent much of my career with one of Arizona's largest biosciences, W.L. Gore and Associates in Flagstaff. I'm now retired, but thrilled to remain actively involved with the biosciences. Before we delve into the program, I would like to recognize the elected officials on the screen. We thank the many state legislators, county supervisors, mayors, and council members for joining us today. The Flynn Foundation has been presenting this annual event since 2002, when it launched Arizona's Bioscience Roadmap, the long-term strategic plan to build a globally competitive bioscience hub in Arizona. The biosciences bring Arizonans improved health outcomes, higher paying jobs, and a stronger, more diversified economy. The roadmap was commissioned by the Flynn Foundation, a private philanthropy that works to improve the quality of life in Arizona. Dozens of institutions and hundreds of Arizona leaders, many of with us today, have worked to implement this recommendations. This event reports back to the community on the progress of our state's bioscience sector. Most years, we hold events in Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff, but in the Zoom world, we can have a single event for everyone. We're expecting more than 350 people on today's call from all corners of the state and beyond. In even-numbered years, we present new data on bioscience performance metrics. So this is an off year for metrics, but Flynn has still compiled a brochure summarizing all that's happened in the past year. And what a year it's been. You'll find a link in the chat to that report, which is also available on the Flynn website. I do, though, want to share some numbers with you. As we near the 20-year mark in our bioscience initiative, it's eye-opening to look at how we've developed into a robust industry cluster. I have a few slides that compare our most recent data presented at last year's event to data from the beginning of the Bioscience Roadmap in 2002. Our industry base has grown substantially. Jobs at bioscience firms and hospitals have increased by 55,000, companies by 800, and wages continue to grow. The average bioscience wage is about 1/3 higher than the average private sector wage in Arizona. The next category of growth is research. In 2002, Arizona lagged its peers in attracting federal grant support, one of the key benchmarks in a bioscience region. Our performance has improved tremendously. We're on track to achieve the ambitious roadmap goals in these areas by 2025. The next category, venture capital. Venture capital has historically been a challenge for Arizona, like most states, but our recent performance has broken records and is a night and day difference compared to 2 decades ago. We're thrilled to see the formation of numerous new investment funds within the state. And finally, our 3 research universities are turning research into IP and companies faster than ever. Not only have the numbers shot up, but the quality of their spin-out companies has increased dramatically. Before introducing our keynote speaker, I'd like to address the crisis that has changed our world in the past year, and of course, that's COVID-19. The pandemic has brought suffering and sorrow to many of us. Here in Arizona, where the impact was especially severe, we nevertheless saw our bioscience community respond heroically. First, hospitals and healthcare systems worked together, worked creatively, and worked beyond exhaustion as they faced dangerous working conditions and unprecedented patient loads. Public health providers strive to make sure all Arizonans could receive COVID care, including those in tribal communities and in neighborhoods of high social vulnerability. Telemedicine kicked into high gear, transforming overnight from the technology of tomorrow to an everyday necessity. Our universities and research institutes quickly created COVID-19 diagnostic and antibody tests for use not only by university and students, but by the community at large. Bioscience companies pivoted their business models to design new diagnostics and therapeutics and manufacture PPE. And we saw amazing stories of individuals who went that extra mile for the good of the community. I'd like to share one example involving a long-term member of our Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee. Last spring, when PPE was scarce, Sharon Harper refused to take no for an answer. Concerned for frontline workers, including her daughter, a physician at Banner University Medical Center, Sharon partnered with another community leader, Marco Lopez, to form a new international supply chain that ran from China to the UAE and onwards to Phoenix. They orchestrated the delivery of 11 million pieces of PPE to more than 100 healthcare facilities and institutions throughout Arizona, including tribal communities. With the help of Governor Ducey, the Arizona National Guard pitched in to distribute PPE statewide. There are many similar stories. Now we're seeing the biosciences being recognized globally for this work. Venture capitalists have seen the sector's stunning success in vaccine development, but also in diagnostics, therapeutics, telemedicine, and devices, and they are investing in bioscience companies like never before. At the FDA, new processes are being designed to handle the coming surge, the best kind of surge this time, a flood of new clinical innovations for patients. More than ever, it's a good time to be in the biosciences. Innovation, it's what we're talking about. Speaking of innovation, I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker. If you've driven by 5th Street and Garfield in downtown Phoenix lately, you've seen a massive building rising. It's the centerpiece of a new innovation district in downtown Phoenix at the intersection of research, education, and industry. Such innovation districts are forming in key bioscience and technology hubs throughout the nation and the world. We are fortunate today to have with us one of the world's leading authorities on innovation districts, Tom Osha. Tom is a global authority on leveraging research and technology into knowledge-led economic development. He serves as board chair of the Global Institute on Innovation Districts. Tom is also a senior vice president of innovation and economic development for Wexford Science and Technology, which develops mixed-use communities built on discovery, innovation, and entrepreneurial activity. Wexford is partnering with Arizona State University and the city of Phoenix on this work in the Phoenix Biomedical Campus. Tom's full bio is available via the link posted in the chat box. During his presentation, if you have a question for Tom, please post it to the Q&A box as we plan to answer questions for about 10 minutes following his presentation. Tom, we're going to let you share your screen.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eve. I appreciate it. It's a great time to be in biosciences, and it's a great time to be in Arizona. And what I'd like to do is just share with you for the next few moments why that is, where I think the opportunities are, and some of the trends that I'm seeing that maybe can make their way to Arizona in terms of beneficial opportunity. You know, as I was thinking about this morning's remarks, one of the things that I saw on the NPR was the fact that today is unfortunately the anniversary of the shooting of Abraham Lincoln. And I didn't know if folks knew that Lincoln was actually the only president that holds a patent. Right? Lincoln was always intensely curious, and in fact, spent a lot of time at the World's Fairs looking at all of the different things that were happening. And so because of his experience on riverboats, because of his experience kind of touring up and down the Mississippi and rivers in Illinois, he came up with the patent for floating a boat over the shoals, actually applied for it while president of the United States and received patent number 6469. Now, Unfortunately, Lincoln never was able to bring this patent into a viable product. The environment was never right around him. While he was an interesting inventor and was able to take this opportunity and create it, there are other drivers in the environment that really help us bring things to fruition. Today, what we really know is that talent is the real currency of innovation. And so that talent is so critical to bringing these kinds of new ideas to market. In fact, nothing substitutes for it, and everything follows it. And that includes money. And so the stronger the talent base, the deeper the talent markets, the more you will find that your venture capital moves in succession with that. As a matter of fact, the only cities right now that happen to be growing in terms of innovation that are outside what Richard Florida calls the superstar cities are cities like Phoenix that are dominated by major research universities and that intellectual capital that aggregates around them. Also, unlike the days of Lincoln or Morse or Edison or Watson, innovation today has become entirely a social enterprise. It is wolf pack innovation, if you will, and that impacts our environment. It changes the nature of that innovation and the environment in which it is done. No longer is there toil in a single lab, but today there are folks that come together in collaborative spaces and linked laboratories, as we have found through the COVID vaccine across the country, across the world, through technology to be able to solve large problems like this. We also know that the world is changing in terms of the demographics of the workplace. Live, work, play, learn, discover, heal in a spatial geography is more the norm than it has ever been. You have no need to look any farther than historically, the holders of driver's license at age 16, a rite of passage for youth in North America, as at historic lows. Car ownership among the group of 16 to 34-year-olds, historic lows. They're looking for more dense environments, public transportation, connectivity, really this environment that is highly walkable and highly engaged. Now, these environments also feature resource concentration for capital efficiency. It's more expensive to start a business than ever, and money is a little bit tighter to get. So it's certainly the longer you can take that money in terms of a runway, the better off you are. So the more sharing that goes on, particularly in equipment, in instrumentation, in laboratories, that is definitely an environment that attracts businesses. And so that creative and productive value of real estate really is outperforming the economic value. It's why rents continue to rise to historic levels in places like Boston, Cambridge, right? In places like San Francisco, in places like La Jolla. This agglomeration drives value. Density is destiny, especially in proximity to intellectual capital. And you don't need to look any farther than what's happening right around Tucson in the research park that the University of Arizona has, on the innovation campuses around Arizona State University, and what's happening even in Flagstaff around NAU, to understand that people do want to be in proximity to great intellectual talent. And finally, innovation must create social equity and economic mobility. All must be able to participate in the opportunities that we create within innovation. Now, some of these you may be looking at and saying, yeah, does that still hold true in a post-COVID world? Well, let's take a look at what COVID really has impacted on our economic ecosystems. Certainly, it has been an accelerant for already emerging trends. I'll go through 5 of those trends in just a moment. It's also exposed disparities in health, wealth, and opportunity. Certainly, in her introduction, Eve was mentioning the importance of serving the tribal communities. So we've seen disparities in African American and communities of color across the country. And that's something that needs to be dealt with. Force collaboration simultaneously to local and transnational scale. The fact that we're right here over Zoom shows what really is a positive aspect of our move into a bit of an online world is collaborations now have expanded transnationally across the globe. At the Global Institute, we actually mapped over 55 different universities around the world in relationship as we were looking for a COVID vaccine that would help stem this pandemic. And as a matter of fact, for those of you who are physicians and understand that the messenger RNA vaccine that was created, particularly the Pfizer and Moderna ones, is unique, never been tried before in terms of that delivery vector. And therefore, the research universities that were able to come together, that never would have happened without this kind of linkage. At the same time, the disruption that we have had in travel, in supply chains have also forced us into this hyper local environment, right? Where we're set with a spatial geography that we can predict and control. Certainly, the full breadth of our research universities and our universities in general has been shown. I think about Arizona State University and how they've really led the country in a number of ways, right? Engaging the entire university, right? Engaging not just the research and biodesign around creating their own saliva test, but also engaging sociology and anthropology around the behavioral dynamics, around creating the app that goes into my ASU to allow you to get a test at any time, to understanding the flows of students, to be able to think about marketing and graphic design and all these elements that it really takes to continue to move forward in this kind of world. And so what we're really seeing is universities stepping in whole to solving these challenges across the globe. And it also shows that while there is an enormous place for for the hard sciences, engineering and life sciences, in growing companies and creating opportunities, the liberal arts, the social sciences, political sciences, marketing, graphic design, education remain critically important. And the same is true in growing a business. Certainly, it has highlighted weaknesses in the supply chain for research. Laboratory work cannot be done in your kitchen. It can't be done in your guest bedroom. And so everybody was scrambling to make sure that they could be safe, yet continue the kinds of research that needs to be done in wet lab environments. Yet the instrumentation, the laboratories that run the assays are often located somewhere else. The supply chain disruption began to expose some of those cracks, and that'll be one of the trends I talk about in a moment. Certainly, there is no doubt that research and scientific inquiry remain critical to our global safety and well-being. And then certainly, the grand challenge of a worldwide pandemic has shown us that we have the capabilities, we have the networks, we have the assets, and we have the mindset to tackle additional grand challenges. In fact, the last speech I gave before COVID shut down was actually in Phoenix. And I prefaced by showing the distance between the Spanish flu and a vaccine 30 years later, the emergence of MRSA, MRSA, and a vaccine 7 years later, and predicted that we would, within 18 months, have a vaccine for COVID because of this ability that we have created to solve these larger challenges by banding together. So let's look at some challenge, or just some of the emerging trends. Trend one is that talent really now is beginning to migrate beyond the superstar cities. It was already happening in places like San Francisco, London, Paris, New York. The cost of doing business was getting so high that particularly young people and folks that were starting to get to the age where schools and home ownership become important were starting to look elsewhere. Last time I was in Palo Alto, I saw people making over $100,000 a year living in vans on El Camino Real. And so that affordability crisis has now been exacerbated. Plus, in a time of lockdown, nobody wants to be with 5 roommates in an 800 square foot apartment. So we have seen a return of folks looking to additional cities. Certainly, you've heard about folks that are moving out. You're seeing it yourselves in Arizona, moving out of California, moving out of Oregon, coming to Arizona, going to Texas. There's a large population migration from New York to Miami. But this also is really going into what I call the secondary cities that are anchored with primary universities. And so places like Eindhoven, certainly Phoenix, Sacramento, Providence, Richmond, Waterloo, Beersheba are seeing an uptick. And this, I believe, is not something that will revert back once we're in an environment that is post COVID. I believe there is an opportunity to leverage what these cities have and create the opportunity to keep, if not attract more of these folks in the environment. Second is life sciences has become the port in the storm. There is no doubt, as I said, you can't do this in your basement or garage. You have to be in a lab environment, and that alone has kind of placed it front and center. Also, I believe COVID has heightened the fact that this is a national security imperative, right? The ability to control vaccines, the ability to control their manufacture is coming back to the shores of North America. We're already seeing movements by all of the major companies, and it has just heightened this fact. Also, what I've seen at the NIH, National Science Foundation, and others, research funding for the foreseeable future is going to continue to remain stable, if not uptick slightly in real year-over-year dollars. So the days of research being cut over the let's say the previous 4 years, those days, research funding is much more stable now. And for at least the next 48 months, I think we're going to see research funding increase somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 15%. What that means is a continued focus on the biosciences and this kind of speed to market, right? What we have seen right now through the Operation Warp Speed, through these emergency waivers being given at the FDA for the drugs, I think we're going to see a faster, renewed focus on speed to market and regulatory easing anyway. That is good. That means maybe some of the timeline will be somewhat reduced. And I'd already talked about supply chains are going to need to be much, much shorter to prevent COVID disruptions. We're seeing GMP, which is good manufacturing protocols, coming closer to innovation districts, at least in the smallest of the pilot scale labs. The third trend, and this is one that even mentioned, that remote medicine's moving to the mainstream, right? Just since COVID, the acceptability has gone from 11% to over 75%. And payers and insurers are now recognizing it. Well, where payers and insurers go, innovation follows, right? Because once there is reimbursement, then it starts to become a real area of focus. And so we are already seeing in a number of what I will call fintech and tech centers, folks now starting to turn the skill sets and the attention to health tech as well, both health tech within the health systems, as well as creating this communication in remote and underserved areas as well. And I think you're going to see an awful lot of non-traditional players enter this. This is where you're going to see the Googles enter. This is also where you may see non-traditional companies like Lowe's enter. This is where you may see insurers enter, or employers themselves stepping in to kind of what I call the first dollar of healthcare. Programs and resources to continue moving out of the research labs and into the marketplace, the discoveries of universities. You know, certainly ASU's Knowledge Enterprise is a perfect example. The McGuire Center at the University of Arizona, Moonshot at NAU are just 3 examples in Arizona. There's a number of others around the country of programs being put in place to unlock the entrepreneurial spirit of faculty and students, as well as to reduce the friction in taking great discoveries out of these laboratories and moving them into the marketplaces. That's only going to continue to accelerate, and especially in life sciences, as the traditional pharma, medical device companies continue their de-anchoring, or the fact that they're taking small research labs and putting them as close to university research in which they are interested is possible. And so the days of AZ or GSK or Pfizer having one or two massive locations are starting to whittle away, and you're starting to now see Merck in 24 small laboratories with major research universities across the world. That you're going to see much, much more of that. That is only a positive thing for Arizona as well. And finally, what we're really seeing is innovation districts highlighted as these kind of platforms for sustainable and inclusive recovery, right? There needs to be a platform in which the investment of dollars is amplified and the opportunity is equally available. Innovation districts that blend university research, corporate engagement, entrepreneurial activity, corporate inclusion all together, those are the environments that the federal government is looking for. And in fact, Bruce Katz, who was one of my co-authors, along with Julie Wagner of the Evolution of Innovation Districts, has done a lot of work with the NOAC Finance Lab and the Biden administration in creating frameworks for programs that will actually result in grants being given and funding available to innovation districts across the United States. But it's not really about the buildings as much as it's about the people and the ideas, right? And so the building blocks of an innovation district, I'll put it in kind of bioscience language like DNA, the university engagement. So that intellectual anchor, you have three great public research universities in Arizona. And so how does that engagement leverage and manifest itself across the biosciences? And the roadmap is a wonderful tool for doing that and for reporting upon the impact of it. Next, you have the engagement of how do you create this place, this space for innovation? And so our newest building, 850 PBC on the Phoenix Biomedical Campus, the one that we've done in partnership with Arizona State University and the city of Phoenix is one example. And it's a building there that is meant to bring together the existing infrastructure and amenities that are already there to kind of create a heart, if you will. This superior built environment becomes important to giving a place to innovation intentionally. We add to that then, this innovation infrastructure. What is it that spurs entrepreneurs? Are they small laboratories? Are they maker spaces, right? Are they the co-working environments? Are they instrumentation that's available to young entrepreneurs that they can use in the universities? Most entrepreneurs I know can't afford $1 million electron microscope. And so are they programs that would allow a growing company to perhaps use a microscope at the University of Arizona or ASU, or to be able to access unique instrumentation that's at NAU? These programs vitally important. And a place where they can go to access them is also critically important. Certainly community and economic inclusion. In life sciences and in life science ecosystems, up to 40% of the jobs don't require a traditional four-year degree. Therefore, how do we create the pathways to making sure that the next generation is ready for those jobs? Well, things like CEI's Lab Force program at the Gateway Community College are vital to this kind of environment. And how do we work more with the school systems so that young people know that careers in life sciences are for them, and Black and brown and tribal children see themselves participating in this environment? And so these are critical programs to these kinds of environments as well. And certainly we can't forget corporate partnership. Large companies provide first customer, they provide scale, they provide resources, they provide funding, and they provide an environment that also gobbles up entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial ideas into that flywheel of an innovation ecosystem. Financing and capital availability is important. And I said it tends to follow talent. The stronger your talent market gets, the more financing and capital we see coming into that kind of market. And then finally, there's a programmatic element to all of this. Arizona is a big, big state. And certainly the distances between Yuma and Flagstaff and Tucson and Phoenix are great. How do you tie all these things together, these great centers of gravity where things are happening, whether it's medical devices in Yuma or biodesign in Flagstaff, or excuse me, biodesign in Tempe? These kind of things are stitched together with programmatic activity, very much like what we're doing today. In fact, when I first came to Arizona, probably about 7 years ago, one of the first things I went to was the bioscience readout up in Flagstaff to understand what was happening across the state. And so these kinds of platforms are perfect for bringing people together. So maybe it doesn't look as smooth as DNA, maybe it looks a little messier like this, but this is the kind of environment that brings these knowledge communities together. And if you've seen one, well, you've seen just one. Wexford alone has 15 across the country, each one of them very different, flavored by the university, the regional economy, and geographic and proximate assets, and certainly the vibrancy and authenticity of the community. 850 North 5th Street, as we said, is the newest one that we have done. It sits right here, stitching together Arizona State's campus, what's happening on the Phoenix Biomedical campus, and we're one place in the state where all three of the research universities come together. Right? It has wet lab research, which is great. Wet lab space is one of the toughest things to come by, particularly in the secondary markets, and it eases the opportunity for companies to continue that move closer to universities and out of, as I said, trend one, those larger, more expensive cities. Innovation anchors and then pairing them with growth companies and market leaders and the workforce of a CEI work wonderfully together, as well as creating this platform for continued growth, right? We don't come somewhere to do one building, but are already working on the design of building 2 and envisioning building 3, working with Dave Kreider, working with PBC, working with ASU and the city of Phoenix to envision how this innovation district continues to grow and expand. So let me leave you with just the success factors to think about, right? For this to work, right, statewide or at the city level, it has to be a shared priority for everyone. It's got to function as an element of your regional innovation ecosystem. And everybody has to be all in on it, right? It has to leverage the elements that you have, the urban elements, but it needs to do so in a way that protects, right, and does not create displacement, but instead creates opportunity, right? And so that has to be shared by all. It needs to think about how to create a structure that is sustainable and how it is governed in such a way that it's smooth, it's quick, it's able to respond to challenges in the marketplace, and finally delivering a pathway and programs to ensure participation for all. So I thank you all for having me. It's been terrific. As you can tell, I am a huge fan of Arizona. I've been coming to Arizona off and on for about 30 years. I have a daughter who is a freshman at ASU and loves it. And any opportunity I can come out and help continue to build this great ecosystem, I'm all in. So with that, Eve, I think I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you for that description of innovation districts and specifically of what's going on in Phoenix. I'm quite looking forward to being able to see it in person now that I've got my 2 shots, so I can, and 2 weeks. Great. So I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm going to just share a couple questions from the chat box, and I'm going to start with the one that relates to kind of where we are in the world at the moment, which is how will the new remote work world impact innovation districts?
Yeah, it's a great question that is being asked globally right now. And so at the Global Institute, we're in conversation regularly with 35 to 50 different districts. And so what I'm sensing from everybody is there is a desperate desire to get back to work, right? We're working from our home offices, we're working from our guest bedrooms, our kitchen tables. The world of innovation is a personal one, right? We can connect over distance, but bringing new ideas to life, having that spark requires an environment where an artist and an engineer and an anthropologist and a life scientist can all bump into each other. We're going to get there. The more that we get our shots, the more that the infection subsides. I think what we're going to see is, though, more flexibility than we've ever had before. This is helpful in Arizona. You can blend indoor and outdoor space. You're going to see lobby designs change to become larger and more spread out. Maybe the compactness of before of co-working spaces where 10 people were crammed into a space for 4, those days I think are behind us and won't be returning. The days of maybe a company taking hundreds of thousands of square feet for desks that rarely get used, those days might be waning a bit too. But I think this opportunity to bring people together in relationship will continue to happen. I think we'll see it be much, much more flexible. I think you also see life science grade buildings become the norm. The kinds of filtration, the kinds of air changes, the widths of our stairwells that we put in our research buildings, I think are going to become the norm just from a health and safety of the building standpoint. But I am sensing out there a desperate desire to return to a work-like environment, maybe not 5 days a week, and that's where real innovation happens and people are recognizing it.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and ask a question of my own, which is that you mentioned shortened supply chains. You mentioned it specifically for lab equipment, but I think it's broader than that. And I wondered if that, do you think onshore manufacturing is going to happen in the same places as innovation districts? Do you think that's a different geography? How do you think the two things relate to each other?
I think they definitely relate to each other, Eve. Here's kind of what I'm hearing and what I'm thinking is we're going to see small pilot manufacturing go into the innovation district. This might be a 5,000 square foot facility that allows me to, as a scientist, you've heard about, translational research, right? Going from the bench to the bedside. Well, it doesn't really end there, right? There's this feedback loop of clinical validation that then goes back to the bench. So having pilot manufacturing in the innovation district allows me to make that loop go much, much faster. I think the large scale manufacturing is going to reshore, but it doesn't need to be in the most expensive urban space. And in fact, I think that's a perfect way of how do environments use their innovation opportunities to bring prosperity to rural and suburban communities as well. So I think you're going to start to see small scale pilot in the innovation districts, then with linkages to larger scale manufacturing that might sit in suburban and even suburban/rural environments. But it is coming back to the shores of North America and of the United States, if nothing more than for a national security reason.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So kind of one more question about innovation districts, and then I'm going to back up a little bit. So how do you think the current trend of kind of declining occupancy in commercial real estate uh, catalyzes or attenuates REI in new innovation districts? How do you see that change?
I think we're going to see more intentionality, right? So an innovation district truly is a place that takes university research and adds clinical validation, entrepreneurial activity, corporate engagement, and certainly don't forget community inclusion. It is not a political boundary drawn for an economic development purpose. And one of the things that we have seen a lot of at the Global Institute and at Brookings and in my travels at Wexford are those who want an innovation district. And so they just draw a line on a piece of paper and say, look, I've got an innovation district, or come to my city, I have 6 innovation districts. And I get there and there's no there, right? And so think about what's happening in Tucson, think about what's happening in Phoenix. There you have the elements together. That is a real district of innovation. It is not just a line that's drawn as the old days when people would draw technology zones and say, if you're in the zone, you get something that you don't get when you're out of the zone. So it's really going to be a lot more intentional. There may be fewer of them, but the ones there are truly going to have some there. And I think that's going to be an important distinction. So it is going to mean that one needs to leverage their anchors. They need to leverage the universities. They need to leverage leading companies. They need to leverage the workforce to really concentrate this into an economic development powerhouse, which also means you can't draw the line so broadly that it gets watered down. I have seen innovation districts that are 7 miles long, and I look at them and no, I could put $2 billion of investment in there and you wouldn't even know it. So they're tighter, more concentrated spatial geography. So I think some of the stuff on the edges is going to bleed off, and the ones that are really going to take our country forward are going to be the ones very much like what you already have. Arizona is well positioned in that regard.
So, Tom, if you were to name a key piece that's still missing from the Arizona or Phoenix bioscience ecosystem, what would give us 1 or 2 key pieces that we need to focus on?
So you have incredible research at all 3 of your universities. I think one of the pieces that is important is, how do you take the friction out of dealing with a hugely complex public tier 1 research university like ASU or the University of Arizona? And that's not a negative judgment on the universities. By their very nature are highly complex, decentralized places, and that works well in the academic setting. But as a business, and particularly maybe a growth business, it can be very intimidating. It can cause enormous difficulties in being able to access the kinds of resources. And so having front doors that speed that with universities is very helpful in taking the friction out of the system. ASU has what they call knowledge enterprise, and there are elements of knowledge enterprise that do allow me as a business to get into relationship with the university. That's a huge step forward. That the Edson Entrepreneurial and Innovation Institute that ASU has put in the building in Phoenix, that's another front door to face businesses. And I know at the University of Arizona and at NAU, they've created kind of offices there that are meant to work with businesses. That is great. And that is a wonderful step forward. Keep doing it. Now, as Arizona, how do you make it easier for companies coming into the state to be able to navigate all 3 of them at once, right? And so maybe even figuring out how one comes together and able to access all of the resources that the state has to offer, that I think might be an interesting competitive advantage.
I think in some ways you've just given an answer to one of the questions that showed up in the chat, which is, with so many innovation districts sprouting up, how do you differentiate Arizona? Or how do we, create both differentiation and sustainability? And your focus on a front door for the state that requires collaboration and cooperation might actually work to some of Arizona's strengths. So I think in the interest of time, I have time for one more question, and it's going to talk about funding. So this is from the chat. From someone based in Tucson, developing a novel drug delivery platform to eliminate drug-induced side effects. And he rightly says, we have things going on in Tucson, but it's not Boston or the Bay Area. And his question is, what can innovation districts bring to that gap in funding that builds the bridge, that lets an entity like this either move onto the screen of larger capital sources or federal funding? And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how innovation districts can help companies go from early stage to sustainable.
So one of the advantages, and the question is spot on, right? You can go into the Bay, you can go into Cambridge, and just by the very nature, the concentration of venture capital is there, and in London and a few other cities. For everybody else, for this rise of the rest, as Steve Case would call it, the power of an innovation district is it can aggregate opportunities. So by their nature, VCs tend to be on the, well, I won't call it the lazy side, I will call it the efficient side. They don't want to get on an airplane and fly several hours to see one company, right? That's why they try to get the companies to come to them, so that in an afternoon, they can walk out their door and go see lots of companies. So why you have the concentration in the places you mentioned, Eve. But now in an innovation district, I've got a concentration of companies. So in St. Louis, for instance, John Talley, who was one of the inventors of Celebrex, had after Pfizer had left St. Louis and he had taken his package and decided he was going to start another company, he went into a small shared lab environment called the Biogenerator. Right? He started his company. Well, he is very well known to VCs. And VCs would come because not only would they get to see him and his research, they could walk by a dozen other companies in there. And before long, they started finding opportunities. This happens even in very small cities. Fort Wayne, Indiana actually has Goldman Sachs Ventures. Why? Happens to be an interesting place for audio engineering. And a small cluster of audio engineering companies. So then it became worthwhile to fly from New York to Fort Wayne, spend a night, and see 8-10 companies. So this concentration that's happening at the research park in Tucson is happening there on the Phoenix Biomedical campus, is happening in some other places across the valley and across the state, that concentrates opportunity so that I can come and look at it. Now, I think there's also a role for the universities and for intermediaries like AZ Bio, the Flynn Foundation to also play, to encourage, to create the showcases, to let these VCs know that there are plenty of investable deals in Arizona, and to smooth that pathway as well. In fact, maybe now for the moment, Zoom gives us the opportunity to reach out to others that you might not have been able to see before.
So really what you're saying is that the concentration or density in innovation districts works not only on the invention side and the innovation side, but also on the funding side, because it makes it makes both processes more efficient.
Yep, that is what we have seen across the globe, yes.
Great. Thank you, Tom, so much for that presentation, for your insights, and to Wexford for coming to Arizona and giving us the opportunity to participate in this intentional collaborative effort. It's very exciting.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And like I say, we are happy to help. We are happy to help. The stronger the state is, the stronger its biosciences are, the stronger opportunities we'll have to create these companies that we've been talking about today. So thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to come in person.
Thank you. Next,
right.
I would like to introduce Tammy McLeod, President and CEO of the Flynn Foundation, who will introduce the next segment, which is our tour of the state. Tammy?
Thanks, Eve, and thanks everyone for being here today. You know, one of the defining characteristics of the Bioscience Roadmap is its statewide coverage. While most bioscience hubs, like many of those that Tom just talked about, are focused on a very specific city, Arizona unites distinctive assets of numerous cities and regions into a strong and diversified ecosystem. Now we're going to look at those latest innovations and collaborations happening all around the state. First, you're going to hear from Matt Lingard. Matt is the Arizona site lead for bear crop science in Marana. He's also the co-chair of the Innovation Economy Initiative of the Southern Arizona Leadership Council. Matt's going to speak on new developments in Tucson and Southern Arizona. Following Matt, you'll see a newly produced video on bioscience progress in Flagstaff and Northern Arizona. Big shout out to Gail Jackson. She's the CEO of the Economic Collaborative of Northern Arizona, and she's coordinated the production of the video. After Gail, we're going to spotlight Yuma. Yuma has global strength in bioag, and we're so pleased that Mayor Doug Nichols has joined our Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee and is here with us today. In Yuma's video, you're going to get to see Paul Brierly. He's the executive director of the University of Arizona's Center for Excellence for Desert Agriculture, and he's also a Flynn Brown Fellow. And you'll hear from Julie Jessen. She's the CEO of Gowan Company. Gowan is a terrific story. It's a family-owned agriculture solutions business based in Yuma with operations in 15 countries and sales in more than 70. And after these presentations, I'll be right back to you to introduce bioscience progress in the Phoenix metropolitan area.
All right, well, thanks for that great intro, Tammy. And it's my absolute pleasure to be here representing Southern Arizona at this Bioscience Roadmap meeting. As Tammy said, my name is Matt Lingard, and I do lead Bayer's newest and I'd say most interesting site. We've built an automated greenhouse in Marana, Arizona, and our mission is to help breed better corn for farmers all over the world as part of Bayer's overall vision of creating health for all and hunger for none. We started our operations in March 2020 in Marana, and it's been a really interesting year, I can certainly say. However, I'm here today in my capacity as co-chair of the SALC Innovation Economy Focus Area and a new member of the Arizona Bioscience Roadmap Steering Committee. It's my pleasure to present this bioscience update for Southern Arizona. And I can say as a Sun Devil living in wildcat country the last 3.5 years, I've personally gotten a ton of energy from the expanding bioscience ecosystem in Southern Arizona. And I'll tell you, it's a great story. Throughout the pandemic, Southern Arizona has continued making progress in growing our bioscience ecosystem and in our quest to build a stronger innovation economy overall. Next slide, please. So what we really focus on in Southern Arizona is integration and coordination and really bringing together the public and private sectors and the universities in particular to make a more vibrant ecosystem overall, especially for our startup space. And if you go to the next slide, what I really want to focus on today is 4 stories. Talk about venture capital in Southern Arizona, what some of our mature STEM businesses are doing, how university research all come together to incubate and start up new innovative companies, particularly in the biosciences areas. Next slide, please. So if my co-chair, Kathleen Sanchez, on the innovation economy were here, she sits on IBM, she'd tell you about the 400 US patents that were issued out of IBM in 2020. And what's really cool about that is you can see the University of Arizona logo shown here is that's in a lot of close partnership with University of Arizona, sitting in some of the space that the university has and co-occupies with IBM. And so this corporate partnership, Bayer, IBM, the large corporations make up, as Tom said, a really important pillar of how we think about bioscience innovation and the bioscience ecosystem. Next slide, please. And of course, venture capital, and Tom mentioned this as well, and it's so important. And a couple of years ago, I would have been saying here that we need more venture capital. I'll never say we don't need more venture capital, but we've certainly seen a huge increase in venture capital in Southern Arizona in particular. It's the best it's ever been in over a decade, starting with the nationally recognized Desert Angels and then adding 3 new venture funds that have emerged over the last 24 months in our region, and they're investing locally. SALC started the ABB years ago with the express purpose of generating more venture capital because there was known, and the growth is statewide. And so when you look at the list at the bottom here, the local investments, and I personally get excited about the ag-facing ones like Crop Track. It's really exciting to see this kind of growth. Next slide, please. And so when we, the other thing I talked about is how we start up and how we incubate. And Startup Tucson is a great example of our commitment to integration, coordinating startups in Southern Arizona. And so Startup Tucson recently launched an award-winning startup guide for entrepreneurs that really brings together a lot of the information. If you were starting a business, if you were a new entrepreneur in Southern Arizona, what's going on in our town? Who are the players? What are the resources that are available to you? This group is leading a dramatic increase in opportunities for the region to gather and work together. In the process of producing this guide, they've also become a convener and an accelerator of innovation and of entrepreneurs. The entire ecosystem is getting better because of this guide and what Startup Tucson has brought to it. And then I'll say personally, I was very fortunate to sit on their idea funding initiative that just happened in the last month, and being able to look at and talk to and converse with the different startups in Tucson was just a really invigorating and really exciting thing to be a part of. And so really appreciate the work that Startup Tucson is doing for Southern Arizona. Next slide, please. We can't talk about a bioscience ecosystem. We can't talk about innovation without talking about University of Arizona. It's really the cornerstone of our region. Its leadership in life science is essential. That's really only the tip of the iceberg for a university that's making incredible progress in countless high-tech areas, from leading edge mining to landing a spacecraft on an asteroid, and all the really great optics and other types of research that's going on. And so University of Arizona, why I'm showing a map here, is really been spreading their innovation influence and footprint throughout Southern Arizona. We've really seen a step change in the last couple of years in the level of engagement under President Robbins' leadership, and then as well with Carol Stewart coming on to lead the tech park space. And so as you can see, there's a couple of new buildings that I'll talk about in coming slides, but with the downtown University of Arizona campus, the Forge building, the UA Tech Park at Rita Road, where IBM is centered, that I was talking about earlier, that there's just an awful lot of U of A expanding and helping incubate really innovative and creative ideas in Southern Arizona. So next slide, please. So digging into this a little more, the UACI is expanding its footprint. And one of the things that we're really excited about is the refinery. So this is a new building that's shown on the left-hand side there. It was shovel ready about 10 or 11 years ago, and then it kind of lost some steam because of the Great Recession. Then President Robbins came in and Carol Stewart came in, and they really accelerated and put the final touches on getting that plan put in place. And the refinery is set to open in fall 2021. And 50% of that building is already committed to University of Arizona. Groups like Tech Launch Arizona, the UA Applied Research Corporation, and another Center for Innovation will be opening there. On another personal note, the UA Center for Innovation also opened a new incubator site in Oro Valley, which is where I actually live in Arizona. And I, as a Bear site lead, I was sat on the board to help figure out how we were going to bring this building to pass. It was an idea that had kind of bounced around again for 10 years or so. And then finally, when Carol Stewart and Bobby Robbins came in, they said, hey, let's turn this into a University of Arizona Center for Innovation. It opened in December 2020, and it's already full of really great and exciting startup companies. Next slide, please. And I could talk for hours, and Carol has, and I always enjoy listening to Carol talk about this, but the University of Arizona Center for Innovation has a record number of current startups in their program, at least 47. And again, I got to listen to a lot of these give their pitches in the biosciences space as part of the idea funding. It was really great to hear about all the innovation in Southern Arizona. Next slide, please. It's not just about UACI, it's also about Tech Launch Arizona and a bunch of other University of Arizona groups. And so Tech Launch Arizona launched 10 life science startups at the start of last year, and 51 since 2013. So you can really see how this is accelerating now. And 60% of that current startup pipeline is focused on life science. And I won't talk about them. There's some really great examples that have even been a result of COVID that you can see on the right-hand side of the slide there. Next slide, please. Last but certainly not least, Bio 5 is one of the most exciting things happening at U of A. It brings 5 different institutions together in one area, and they work to solve really difficult problems in biosciences. The most recent example is the COVID-19 response. It was using turf leverage funds, and they had, because of existing infrastructure, lots of really great quick responses, diagnostic test kits, 3D printed masks, wastewater testing, and then also were able to create a robust and lasting impact and new awards that were awarded and targeted as part of the COVID-19 relief area. So if you go to my last slide, I just really simply want to say thank you to the Flynn Foundation. Your partnership is so critical for the success of what we're doing in Southern Arizona. It's a really exciting time to be in the biosciences in Southern Arizona. It's a really exciting time to be in ag biotech as well, and really looking forward to hearing more about what's going on in the rest of Arizona from that point of view. Thank you very much.
Arizona's quality of life has attracted great minds and progressive businesses that in turn are enhancing lives all around the world through the development, growth, and expansion of many bio-based businesses. Let's learn more about the landscape and bioscience clusters that are present in Flagstaff, Arizona.
The Pathogen and Microbiome Institute, better known as PMI, is a research institute at Northern Arizona University. We specialize in studying germs and the diseases that they cause. So one of the things that we did very early in the pandemic was set up a testing service. And so other universities and even pharmaceutical companies have been coming to us to test their drugs and their antibodies against the virus in our high containment BSL-3 laboratory. PMI is in Flagstaff in Northern Arizona because of NAU, of course, but also because of TGen. Almost 20 years ago, the two institutes came together to form what is really one of the best infectious disease research teams in the world.
TGen is the Translational Genomics Research Institute, a nonprofit research institute that was founded almost 20 years ago here in Arizona to really make best use of next generation DNA sequencing technology to further human health. So back in January of 2020, when we first started hearing about this new coronavirus coming out, TGen started developing new federally certified CLIA laboratory and became the first testing laboratory in Arizona to be testing for the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Machine Solutions is based here in Flagstaff, Arizona. This is our global headquarters. We have 6 other manufacturing sites throughout the world. We design, fabricate, and assemble equipment used for testing and producing medical devices. One of the unique and exciting projects that Machine Solutions is currently working on is the implementation of a robotic arm to automate a historically manual process. As medical devices have become smaller and more complex, it's increasingly difficult to have an operator assemble the pieces and parts.
W.O. Gore & Associates is a global material science company that translates our technology into products that improve lives. Here in Arizona, we make medical products like these devices that repair aneurysms or holes in the hearts for patients around the world. And recently, during the pandemic, we shifted into innovating new products that were suddenly in demand. We partnered with several manufacturers to develop washable isolation hospital gowns to save on waste and augment supplies. We engineered new respirator covers, face shields, and N95 masks for healthcare providers. These products were donated all across the Arizona community.
Pubba Medical is a balloon contract manufacturer. We make all sorts of different types of balloons. Over the past several years, we have become global experts in semi-compliant balloons, compliant balloons, all different types of materials such as nylon, P-baxes, polyethylenes, and we also do all sorts of different shapes and geometries. We're in the NAU Biomechatronics Lab. We develop things like wearable exoskeletons to help individuals with disabilities improve their capacity to walk and to run. NAU has been an excellent partner in helping with my university spin-off, Biomodem. So NAU has assisted in coming up with beneficial license agreement terms to help the company commercialize the intellectual property that's been developed in the academic lab.
In Flagstaff, Arizona, we believe in moonshot thinking. And for the last 20 years, the purpose of Moonshot and NACIT has been to help those disruptive innovators, business leaders, bring those new ideas to the market. Not to mention 38,000 square feet of campus space to dream big and ignite that startup right off the ground. Moonshot and NACIT has a space and the know-how to bring your big idea to life.
The City of Flagstaff has recently implemented 5 new incentives. The Job Creation Incentive and the Development Reinvestment Incentive are designed to help attract targeted businesses, some of which being in the biomedical field. These incentives, coupled with our great economic development team, are ready and willing to help new biomedical businesses choose Flagstaff.
behind Rich and I is a 32-acre parcel out here at the Flagstaff-Pulliam Airport. The City of Flagstaff and Gentera Enterprises are partnering to develop this site as a bioscience, technology, and research park.
There's something very special about Northern Arizona. We have a scientific community that is really better than any other place in the world. And most importantly, we have the natural environment where we're able to do things outdoors at a whim. You know, one day you could be in the Sonoran Desert hiking among the cactus. The next day you can be skiing at 11,000 feet. Where else in the world can you do that? Flagstaff.
Hi, I'm Paul Brierly. I'm Executive Director of the Yuma Center of Excellence for Desert Agriculture, and I'm also a Flynn Brown Fellow. I'm coming to you today from the University of Arizona's Yuma Agricultural Center in Yuma, Arizona. Yuma agriculture is unique, and in many measures is in the top 1/10% of all counties across the United States. We do it through a combination of excellent weather that allows year-round growing, excellent water rights. We have a labor source across the border, and we have actually excellent soil that is washed out from when the Grand Canyon was formed. We produce most of North America's winter leafy green vegetables, along with other crops like medjool dates, durum wheat that makes great quality Italian pasta, citrus, and about 150 other crops. This is truly world-class agriculture right here in your backyard, contributing over $3 billion to Arizona's economy. The University of Arizona is Arizona's land-grant institute, which means that in addition to teaching and research, we also have a mission of outreach, bringing knowledge to the people and to the industries of Arizona. Yuma is the only place besides Tucson that all three of those missions are accomplished. The agricultural centers and the research farms provide land laboratories and indoor laboratories for both university researchers and industry to accomplish research in many of the life sciences. I have the honor of running this unique public-private partnership between the desert ag industry and the university. We focus on the pressing problems that they face, and we hope that if we come up with usable results, they'll continue to find value in what we do. At the Yuma Center of Excellence, it's our close collaboration with our donors in the industry that keep us focused on the problems that need solving. One such donor is the Gowan Company, based right here in Yuma, Arizona. I'd like to introduce you to the CEO of the Gowan Company, Julie Jessen.
Thank you, Paul. As you pick up from Paul's work, agriculture is at a phenomenal pivot. We're watching that from Yuma and identifying Gowan's role. Gowan started as a crop consultancy more than 50 years ago here in Yuma. Step by step, we've grown backward into distribution, field development, and evaluation, as you see here in this bioassay lab. We work on problems that are too narrow for the behemoths in our industry. For example, we have a project in fire blight here, an intermittent but fatal disease that affects particular crops such as apples and pears. We use this hawthorn plant in our greenhouse as an alternate host. For our work here, the most exciting digital ag field is the identification of the soil microbiome and how the 10,000 different bacteria in a handful of soil work together and work on the plant. But for us, the most pertinent of these transformations is the promise to biosynthesize our products. In this lab, as well as in our lab in Columbia, we're doing screening and development for pesticides based on microbial sources and plant extracts. Besides our conventional line, we have 10 commercial biopesticides, and we're working on dozens more at various stages from early screening to final development in this lab and our lab in Columbia. Our original plant extracts came from Columbia, where we invested and then acquired the biosolutions company EcoFlora. EcoFlora grew from identifying natural pesticides out of plants in the region and then developing these. We continued this investigation line and are now working with another investigator looking at desert plants for pesticidal activity. Now we produce the commercial product by extraction, but the reason why biosynthesis is one of the most exciting fields for us is the potential to develop a cleaner way to make these in harvesting by fermentation, hairy root culture, cell culture, or another biological method. We also are looking at bacterial product sources and have cooperations with experts around the world, such as a program we have going at the Edwin Mach Foundation in Italy. Several interdependent paths have to work together to get something to Paul's constituents and to growers around the world. Here at the U of A, we have a formulation lab dedicated to biopesticides. Keeping bacteria viable or plant extracts stable on the shelf and hardy when they're sprayed on the crop is a tougher challenge than we face with our synthetics that we do in our formulations development center in town. We need this formulation though before we can proceed to registration, where EPA and its counterparts around the world assess our studies on environmental and health effects. Once the registration is underway, the field development reps work on a multi-year development plan to understand how the product can fit in production agriculture. We thank you for your interest in agriculture and in Yuma, and we hope you'll check back on our progress in a few years. Thanks.
Honestly, those were terrific videos. Thank you so much, Tucson. Thank you, Flagstaff. Thank you, Yuma. I think it's an honor and a privilege to see what's happening in our state. And now we're going to turn to the Valley of the Sun. There's so much happening here also, and especially in the hubs for collaborative innovation. For example, ASU recently opened the Health Futures Center on the Mayo Clinic campus in North Phoenix that houses biomedical related programs and collaborations with Mayo. The WearTech Center at Park Central Mall is making advances in wearable technologies, bioelectronics, neurotechnologies, and more. And ASU and the city of Mesa are now planning a new facility that can be used augmented and virtual reality to impact healthcare. And now we have 3 more for you. Stay tuned for some quick hit presentations on 3 new bioscience campuses here in the Valley. First, Tempe Mayor Corey Woods will speak about the new Tempe Idea Campus. Mayor Woods joined our steering committee last year, and he's with us today. Then Dave Kreider, the executive director of the Phoenix Biomedical Campus, will give a brief overview of progress at the state's largest collaborative bioscience campus. And after David, we're going to look at Creighton University's new health science campus at the Park Central Mall. We're so pleased to have with us today at the steering committee, Catherine Tadero. She's Creighton's Vice Provost of Health Sciences Campuses. Let's look at these videos.
Hello everyone, I'm Tempe Mayor Corey Woods, and I'm honored to be able to join you today. Tempe's first industry was the Hayden Flour Mill in the 1870s. But today we have a successful professional economy in science and technology. Companies such as Medtronic, Sonora Quest Laboratories, Cigna Healthcare, Express Scripts, and Cranial Technologies are a few of the exceptional companies that have been staples of Tempe. With ASU's Biodesign Institute doing incredible work in our backyard, it was a great opportunity for the city of Tempe to invest in this sector of our economy. The Idea Tempe campus is the latest commercial development to help grow Tempe's overall bioscience and technology-focused economy. Idea Tempe was built at the western edge of Tempe Town Lake. And considering this land use was an old landfill, you can imagine the environmental remediation that was necessary to transform the blighted land to what it is now. In 2018, the city entered into an agreement with the Boyer Company to build a 1 million square foot campus on that site, connecting it to the Tempe Trail System and the Tempe Center for the Arts. Today, we have a first-class project constructed with LEED standards, including buildings angled to maximize sun shading while maintaining the unobstructed views of the Papagos and Tempe Town Lake. In January of last year, the first building became headquarters for the peripheral intervention business with Becton Dickinson. The PI business, as it is known, has an extensive research and development group in Tempe to design and test many medical devices that are then marketed around the world. In fact, almost 725 people are employed at BD in Tempe and perform a variety of functions such as regulatory, clinical, medical affairs, marketing, customer support, and physician training. Although many of these positions have worked from home during the past year, the BD research group has stayed active in the building throughout COVID, using the lab space for continued testing and product design work. Idea Tempe is a lot to offer the growing bioscience and technology-focused industries in Arizona, and has already been a catalyst for additional development in Tempe. The city is working with the Boyer Company to identify the next tenant for the campus and we hope to be announcing phase 2 very soon. Feel free to let me or my economic development team at the city know if you'd like a tour. I'd like to end by saying thank you to everyone, and a special thanks to the Flynn Foundation for the tremendous work you do to help grow bioscience in Arizona. Tempe is proud to be a partner.
Well, I want to give a big thank you to the Flynn Foundation for welcoming me into the Roadmap community. It's one of the most exciting opportunities I've had in a long economic development career and city management career in Phoenix. I'm Dave Kreider. I was hired about 8 months ago by the 3 universities and the Board of Regents to help coordinate the university's activities with the Phoenix Biomedical Campus, focusing on marketing, planning, and supporting the city's great economic development activities on the campus. Just as a reminder to some of you that are relatively new to the Central Phoenix environment, the campus is one of Arizona's great pivots and one of Phoenix's great pivots. If you would have looked at what the map would have originally envisioned, the PBC would have been an expansion for the Phoenix Convention Center and the home of the Arizona Cardinals football stadium. But remarkably, with the energy provided by the folks starting TGen, by University of Arizona, Arizona State University, NAU, the city, the bricks were put in place to create the PBC with the mortar provided by the Flynn Foundation from day one, initially supporting TGen and then through the roadmap activities. I would focus just on 3 really important distinguishing characteristics of the Phoenix PBC. It is the one place in Arizona where our 3 universities are physically situated together in this collaborative place. And there are actually 8 colleges among the 3 universities that are on the campus, 4 more colleges associated with Arizona State University's downtown campus within walking distance, and these 2 extraordinary high schools, the Arizona Bioscience High School and ASU Prep Academy. So having the university teaching and associated research going on the campus in conjunction with TGen is one thing. The second thing that I think is a very distinguishing characteristic is the transformation of downtown Phoenix during the time the campus has been established into this extraordinary, walkable, amenity-rich, connected urban environment that provides a setting for the campus that I think really distinguishes it somewhat from the many of the innovation districts that are around the country that are in more suburban locations. And there are actually 400 tech companies that have aggregated around this Central Phoenix environment. And then the third thing, which is critically important, is the proximity of the campus to these 5 really important hospital systems, Banner, Dignity, Valley-Wise, Phoenix Children, and the VA, 3 of which are physically on the campus, and 1 that is just across the street from the campus. So having the hospitals and the clinical environments connected to the campus, I think has been very important as well and has distinguished us. The thing that really is the game changer, which Tom Osha focused on earlier, is this creation of this partnership between Arizona State University, the city of Phoenix, and Wexford Science and Technology to transform the northern portion of the campus into an innovation center that for the first time can accommodate private users on the campus. Entrepreneurial users, the startup community, but also corporate users. Remarkably, since the inception of the campus, while there's been great teaching going on by the 3 universities and the research associated with them, we've never really had a place where private users could aggregate on the campus and really create this bioscience entrepreneurial ecosystem. And as Tom had pointed out earlier, this is a build to scale environment on this portion of the campus. Wexford has built about 220,000 square feet, but this portion of the campus is planned for almost 1.5 million square feet of similar buildings, and will propel the campus from its current environment of slightly under 2 million square feet of development to over 6 million square feet of development. So it's a really exciting time for us, a lot of changes, and I am just extremely encouraged by our connectivity with the Flynn Foundation and the willingness of the 3 universities to work collaboratively with us, with the Board of Regents, and with the City of Phoenix. It's a very exciting time. Thank you.
I'm grateful to greet you from our beautiful Creighton University Health Sciences Phoenix campus, which is taking magnificent form and shape here in the Midtown area. Move in for our College of Nursing, School of Medicine, and the School of Pharmacy and Health Professions programs is scheduled to begin in May of 2021, with classes beginning then in August. Our projections are that by fall of 2024, we will enroll more than 900 students studying to be future physicians, nurses, occupational therapists, physical therapists, pharmacists, and physician's assistants right here at our Phoenix campus. Combined with our campus in Omaha, that would make Creighton University the largest Catholic health professions educator in the United States. We're so proud of that distinction, but we are even more excited about our opportunity to expand our service to Arizona and the Southwest, and to address the critical need for healthcare professionals right here in this region. As a Jesuit Catholic institution, we're so committed to educating not only highly skilled healthcare professionals and leaders, but graduates who are compassionate, caring, and engaged in their communities. I would like to thank our healthcare partners, Dignity Health St. Joseph's Hospital and Medical Center, District Medical Group, and Valleywise Health for their continued support, and to the people of the greater Phoenix area for so warmly welcoming us into their community. We're so glad to be here, and we're eager to serve you.
Wow. Thank you to all the presenters for your updates on bioscience activity across the state. These are truly impressive developments that are paying off in improved health outcomes for Arizonans and a stronger, more resilient economy for the state as a whole. I'd like to stress that these are just examples. We couldn't even get close to mentioning the recent progress of all the institutions and organizations collaborating to advance Arizona biosciences. As a reminder, you can find much more along these lines in the Flynn Foundation's new Bioscience Roadmap Progress Report, which is available via a link that Juliet will put up in the chat box. So today we've seen the remarkable growth that has taken place in our bioscience sector over the past 2 decades. We've seen biosciences go beyond providing health and economic benefits. This sector has helped us in our worst societal crisis. We've seen groups come together to create innovation in the bioscience and related areas throughout the state, not only in downtown Phoenix. These are wonderful milestones. But the open question is, what needs to happen next? And that's where you come in. We have 5 years left on our current bioscience roadmap plan. We've identified top priorities over this time frame in the past couple years, but we need you. We need you to tell us what else can accelerate and strengthen our bioscience sector and your businesses and institutions. Where are the gaps in our ecosystem? Where are opportunities that can be leveraged? Please, please get these thoughts to the Flynn Foundation using the email address in the chat box or reach out and contact any one of us that you know connected to the foundation on this topic. With that plea for your help and your input, I'm going to close our session today by saying that any unaddressed questions that were in the chat box, we will endeavor to get answers for you and follow up after this session. But in order to be respectful of your time, we're going to try and close on time. I'm going to close by saying thank you so much for joining us. Please stay safe and healthy. And we look forward to the day when we can engage with you in person once again. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Bye-bye.